Hey, this is Stephen Rothberg. I am the president and founder of College Recruiter, and I am really happy to be joined today by Jim Kanichirayil. He has at least 15 jobs that I know of, but the two that I kind of know the best, one is with Circa, and the other one is that he's the co-founder and co-host of the Cascading Leadership podcast. The other 13, I think if we were to get into those, that would probably be the end of the 10 or so minutes. Is that about right, Jim?
Yeah, that's dead on, and happy to be on a show with a fellow podhead like myself. So looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. So before we dive into the actual conversation, tell people a little bit about what you do at Circa, the podcast, what keeps you busy from 8 to 5.
So great question, and I'll keep it as simple as possible. So at Circa, I am the channel partnerships manager, and I'm primarily responsible for bringing on new partners that align with our go-to-market vision from a product and services perspective. So Circa is a company, we're an end-to-end talent strategy solution, and we've embedded DEI through every element of our offering, and our vision is to bring forward a talent strategy solution that has DEI that answers for every element of that candidate lifecycle. So that's I bring on partners to our ecosystem. The Cascading Leadership podcast, it's 120 some odd episodes in, and it's focused on helping leaders and professionals from underrepresented communities move their career further faster. And there's a bunch of stuff in addition to all of that is involved in it, but I'll keep it as short and sweet as I can, which is a struggle for me.
That ditto. I'll just say that in one word. Now, I guess I violated that. So two quick pieces of commentary. One is for the listeners who are in talent acquisition. If diversity, equity, inclusion is an issue, which it almost always is and should be, then definitely you need to reach out to Jim and the team at Circa. They are, without a doubt, like head and shoulders above the vast majority of DEIB vendors. One size does not fit all. I know that from talking to a number of our sort of joint clients where they use you guys for one thing and us for something else, that it's that there are different pieces that one client might struggle with that you can help them, and you might help other clients with other pieces. I guess the other commentary is 120 episodes for your podcast. It's more than enough to know better. Yeah.
No, it's a great way to get to know people and kind of understand them at a level beyond what just standard networking would be. So it's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah. Awesome. So the first question that I've got for you that, maybe you can, give me a minute or two answer is about the talent strategy. Like for so many organizations, that talent strategy, I think you and I have talked, it's broken. Tell me more about that. Why do you feel that way?
So I'll keep in mind that this is a 10-minute show because this could be a really long answer, but I think there's a fundamental principle that gets overlooked when organizations are approaching their talent strategy. And I think this is a function of some misguided thinking from a leadership perspective. So we all know when we're talking about the HR audience and the talent acquisition audience, in up times or down times, they're always told to do what? Do more with less.
Yeah.
And that leads to a bunch of downstream impacts that doesn't serve overall talent strategy well. And the key issue that I like to call out is that when you think about talent strategy in general, a lot of organizations are going forward with the solution set being solely focused on the talent attraction side of the employee lifecycle, where really the focus should be on post-hire and maximizing your existing employees and your infrastructure to get the most out of that cohort, because that's actually where the biggest impact is going to be felt. So when you're asking the question, how is talent strategy broken? I think the eye is on the wrong ball. The eye needs to be focused on talent retention and development versus constantly being focused on talent attraction.
That's really interesting. So, as the founder of a job board, a college recruiter, our customers, our employers are using us at that front end, that top of the funnel, the sourcing side. And so that's where our conversations are focused. But you're right. I mean, if you bring in the right candidates and a day later, they're all quit, they're fired, whatever. The best sourcing in the world isn't going to help that. The best talent acquisition in the world isn't going to help that. It's really, and when I hear from women, from others that are struggling in organizations, it's like you can just see there's just a massive turnover. A lot of times the organizations hire the right people, but then just don't keep them. So, yeah.
The one thing that I will add on that, it's not just some random guy that's saying that. You and I both have an interest in keeping the talent attraction funnel hopping like it always is. But when you look at from an organizational perspective, my expertise, my doctoral research is on retention and turnover. So organizations are figuratively burning money because they have this revolving door that's set up. For every employee that you lose from a turnover scenario, that can cost up to 200% of their annual salary and replacement costs. So focus on the internal infrastructure from a people and process perspective first, sort that out, and then your spend on the talent attraction side of it is going to be much better utilized.
Yeah, you're throwing good money after bad if you get those out of order. So speaking of setting programs up to fail, DEIB programs, well-intentioned, sometimes not, but I think usually they are. They're often set up to fail right from the beginning. And I think some of the listeners might be like, why is that? But I've heard you talk a little bit about this, and maybe you can help the listeners understand why you feel that way.
Yeah, I think this is a frustration that's been articulated to me by a lot of the practitioners in the field. And some of the frustrations from those practitioners is the fact that DEI initiatives are spun up, often without really much in terms of budget. So if you're looking at something that's important within the organization, you have to put budget behind it. And then you have to put, what are the measurables and KPIs and deliverables that need to be there? And in fact, a lot of the organizations that spin these up don't even allocate the appropriate level of attention across both of those things, from a budgeting perspective and from a KPI and outcomes and deliverables perspective. And oftentimes people are drafted into these roles to try to figure it out, and it's just extra work. So if you're taking that model, yes, it's important to have DEI be within your organization, because there's tons of research and data that shows that this drives measurable performance outcomes for the business. In fact, organizations that have a demonstrated commitment to DEIB tend to outperform those organizations that don't have them. So it's not just, touchy-feely stuff that we're talking about. And that leads to the second issue in terms of how DEIB initiatives are set up to fail. There's a large segment of the population and leadership that believe that DEIB initiatives are just nice to have elements. And you see it taking shape when you have an economic downturn. What have you seen? What have you heard from practitioners in the field? Our budgets, which were already tiny, got slashed. Some of our ERG programs, or all of our ERG programs, got shut down. And now we have to focus on, quote unquote, more important things that take precedence in a downturn or challenging economic situation. So unless you're really committed to business results and outcomes and driving performance, this is where I'm articulating the frustration that a lot of DEIB practitioners have, is that, hey, we want the optics of having a DEIB program or strategy. We just don't want to put any skin in the game.
Yeah, that's well said. I've seen too many organizations say we need to have a better diversity hiring effort. They'll send a visible minority employee, perhaps a recruiter, perhaps a hiring manager, to a historically Black college and university, do a couple days of interviews, maybe have a couple candidates come back, maybe hire somebody or not, and then it becomes a check the box. We think we are in compliance or some level above that, and it's so unfortunate because, like, as you were saying a few minutes earlier, Jim, there's study after study after study shows the more diverse your workforce is, the more productive that workforce is.
So here, the piece that I'll add on that analysis that you just provided, Steve, is this: that check the box mentality and that check the box effort is not lost on the candidates either.
Right.
If you look at millennial and Gen Z candidates, they're making up to 80% of their join or leave decisions on an organization is based on the organization's commitment to advancing DEIB initiatives. And you know what they're doing? All of that performative stuff that an organization might do in what you just described, the first thing that candidate is doing is looking up the ladder within your organizational chart. How many people in your organization look like me? How many people higher up in positions of authority look like me? And if they see you taking this check the box performative effort and those candidates don't see it reflected in the higher echelons of the organization, guess what? They're not going to apply.
Yep. Just go to the About Us page, and if they all look like me, there's an issue. So the last question before we leave off. You and I are both big fans of technology. Technology definitely has its place, but I think we also feel that at times a technology first solution isn't the way to go. So specifically for high volume, talk about why a tech first approach isn't a good approach for high volume hiring.
I mean, I would make the argument that a technology first solution isn't a good approach for any organization. And the reason being is that if you haven't clearly mapped out your people and process components of that transformation initiative that you're putting forward, you're setting yourself up to fail. So for example, in a high volume environment, let's take a look at just the application process. So you've got a position description, you've posted it out, you're not getting anybody to apply, or you're getting really poor quality of applications. Rather than throw technology at it, you need to be looking at the job description. You need to be looking at what makes this job stand out. And I don't think that's unique to high volume. What is it about this position that is going to compel a candidate to apply for this role? If you haven't clearly articulated that in your job posting, there's the problem. That's a process and people issue. It's not a technology issue, because if you can throw the greatest talent attraction sourcing tool in the history of the world, and if your job descriptions are junk, you spent a lot of money and people still didn't apply. And guess what? Whoever advocated for that piece of technology is getting fired. So that's why a technology first solution is not the way to go. Look at your people and look at your process across your entire employee and candidate lifecycle. Start there first. And this is why sales managers hate me. Start there first and then bring technology into it.
Yeah. If you automate a terrible process, you've still got a terrible process. Well, Jim, thank you so much. As we leave off, other than LinkedIn, is that the best place for people to find you for more, if they want to connect with you, continue the conversation, or what would you like them to do?
LinkedIn is the best place to find me. And here's the thing. I'm not a product pitcher. So if you want to talk anything on the talent strategy space, from talent attraction to, onboarding, retention, training and development, all of that sort of stuff, let's have a conversation, because that's really like my wheelhouse. And it's the basis for a lot of the things that I talk about. So find me there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for having me.